Hey guys, and welcome to Amygdala's Bane. Today we will be talking about toxic relationships. So we'll be covering what it means to be toxic. We'll also be talking about the different signs that you can look for to recognize if someone is actually being toxic towards you. Then we will move on to discuss how to set boundaries with these people so that you can be in a healthier relationship. And also when those boundaries are not met or respected, then we will talk about how you can cut these people out of your life. And we will also discuss a little bit about why people act toxic, why they act the way they act, so that maybe these people can also understand their behaviors and try to change it in order to create better relationships.
You know, guys, we actually didn't need to do any research for this episode
We have enough friends in Islamabad.
to know exactly what this episode entails. We just had to do no research for this episode. Also,
Well, I was going to research, but Kazi wouldn't let me research myself, so there's
Gule
that
was
too.
just going to give you a 6-page article about
myself.
what being toxic means. Also, all of our research includes poisonous frogs.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
mixed up the slides a little bit. So all of our pages is just what literally toxic means. So we're going to be discussing frogs in this episode. I think, because toxic isn't an official word. It's a very
Term.
broad term, and it's also a new term. It's a very postmodern millennial kind of term. They didn't really use it. We haven't used it before that time. It's used to describe a lot of things, and I think for the purpose of the podcast, I think we'll make a distinction between toxic being about emotionally abusive instead of being physically abusive
Yeah.
or another type of abuse, because I think when you're referring to toxic, I think you're usually referring to emotional abuse or verbal abuse.
Yeah.
I think physical abuse and any other type of abuse
Come in a
should
different
come in a
category.
different category.
Yeah.
Especially because every time I've talked about toxic, it's always been in such an informal, unserious way.
Yeah.
So I think categorizing those two things separately is important, but also saying that staying away from toxic people is also really important. So saying both of those things while going into the podcast, where we recognize that those things are there too, but we don't want to mix the two things together, especially because toxic isn't an official term.
Yeah.
It's a term we made up, really.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple relationships where you can identify toxic traits. So we're going to be talking about friends, we're going to be talking about family, we're going to be talking about any kind of relationship, a romantic relationship. We'll be talking about what toxic looks like in those kinds of relationships. One of the things that's constant in all relationships that are toxic is, and one of the identifiers that any psychologist or any therapist will use the most is, it doesn't matter if they don't show any of the signs. If you're in a relationship with someone or you're friends with someone and you
feel more drained than lifted up, basically, it means that you should try to monitor what's going on in that relationship and see why hanging out with that person or spending time with that person maybe makes you anxious before you have to meet them, or you feel like you don't want to meet them, or after you've talked to them or met them you feel more drained than you do happy, or you feel like, I just spent time with this person that I wanted to spend time with, instead of I feel so exhausted having spent time with this person, because that in of itself means that there is some sort of, to an extent, there is a toxicity, is that a word? Toxicity. There is a level of toxicity, that's a weird word, in that relationship.
Also, someone being toxic to you doesn't necessarily mean that person is a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes personalities just don't line up.
Yeah.
Sometimes if two people are extremely extroverted and need a lot of attention, sometimes that doesn't mix properly.
Mm-hmm.
When one person needs a lot of attention but one person isn't capable of giving that much attention, and one person feels bad because that person feels the person who isn't giving them attention is ignoring them or or intentionally trying to make them feel bad, that could be a sign of a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Also, I will be referring to this as that person who said this person in the context of that person. So there is 5 different persons involved.
It makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
If we listen to Go back, rewind it.
Play it slowly.
And you'll understand what I'm trying to say. Another trait that's common in all toxic relationships is being manipulated. I think being manipulated is a very
again
broad category, because even when someone even if someone is manipulating you, I think we always associate manipulation with the negative, but someone might be trying to, through more forceful means, be trying to convince you of something positive. But it depends in what context they're trying to do that and for what purpose. So I think when we're talking about manipulation, if you're trying to coerce someone into doing something that you think would be positive for them,
it's still toxic, because you need to give them enough space to do that thing that's right for them. You can, of course, there's nothing wrong with advising your friend or a family member or anyone you love to do something that you think is good for them, but if they have chosen not to do that thing, all you can really do is give them the points, give them the reasons why you think this is good for them, and then let them on their own move towards that. Because if you force them into it, it's not really them improving for themselves, it's them doing that thing because you told them to, which won't really actually have the positive effect you intended in the first place.
I also think it depends on the seriousness of the issue. I think if it's a decision that doesn't affect someone very heavily, then that applies. But I think if it's a decision that would seriously impact someone, I think in that scenario, as a friend, despite risking your relationship, I think it depends on the situation. I think, for example, if someone's extremely nervous and they say, "Okay, I don't want to go for my exam. I just cannot go for my exam," and you speak to them in a forceful way or trying to convince them that they have to go. So I think it depends on what the situation is calling for. I think it's situation dependent, and then you also need to check yourself, because you need to check where those feelings are coming from. So you need to be able to say, if I'm being that forceful to this person, or if I'm trying to coerce this person through more than just trying to convince them, what are my motives, and what is the end game for this plan? Because in the end, it might have some positive effects for you, because at the end of the day, you might be trying to help them, but in a roundabout way, you might be trying to help yourself.
By trying to feel better about yourself because, I helped my friend go to their exam. That's one of the ways.
I guess so. I don't know. It's complicated.
It's complicated though, but you need to check your intentions if in that situation.
And also, I feel if someone is feeling uncomfortable because someone is trying to coerce them into something, that they make evident that they do feel uncomfortable, then, especially if it's your friend, then. I don't know how to say it properly, because I think it would be obvious that you're in a toxic. I think not obvious, because people are in toxic relationships where they don't even understand it's toxic. But if you're feeling upset if someone's trying to convince you of something, I think that's a very surefire way to know something's up. Because I feel even as a person, you would know that your friend is trying to do the best for you. I think so. I think there's lots of different dynamics there.
It's a complicated way of looking at it.
That's one of the more niche ways of looking at being toxic. Another aspect of being toxic is the fact that you are someone in relationships who's giving everything as opposed to them doing anything in return.
Because a relationship is supposed to be a give and take situation. It's supposed to be give and take. It can't just be you giving all the attention or giving all the care and then not receiving anything in return. Not receiving anything in return as in like a transactional kind of way. Just like if you give someone attention and you help them, suppose for homework, or you just help them emotionally like you're supposed to do as a friend or family member, but they never do the same for you, and and that starts to affect you negatively, and you notice that when I come to them for help, they don't try to do anything for me, but whenever they come to me for help, I'm always the first one to respond, and I'll do anything for them. So that also has a toxic element. Are you being treated fairly? Are you receiving the same treatment that you're giving them?
I think everyone in their life faces at some point is, if you are so desperate for someone's attention and you're so desperate for someone's friendship that you're texting them literally every day, like to initiate a conversation, you text them every single day, and you're not seeing any feedback from them, you're not seeing any care from their side. If you are being, and there's fault at both sides here, I want to say, because one, if you're recognizing that you are so desperate for someone's attention and they are not giving it to you, you need to step away from that situation.
Yeah, because then you'll just end up in this cycle of constantly trying to do more to please them and get their attention.
It'll just hurt you in the end.
Yeah.
It won't do anything to the person whose attention you want.
Exactly.
They won't care.
Because they're indifferent.
Exactly.
They'd be indifferent.
See, and then another thing another thing is envy there. The envy is going to burn you up.
Yeah.
Because you'll constantly be trying to get their approval. You'll constantly be trying to gain their friendship while they themselves don't identify with you in the same regards.
Yeah.
So
a friendship isn't you desperately wanting to be someone's friend and them not treating you like a friend. You need to, it's hard, but you need to realize that that person is not your friend, no matter what, and it's not your fault. It's just that they are indifferent towards you. If they are indifferent, then no matter what you do, it's not going to change their mind. Constantly trying to get their attention or doing more for them is not going to change how they react towards you. Our mic almost fell.
Our mic did almost fall. We also do use a mic.
Yeah,
so
we do.
We do
Okay,
use a mic.
But I forgot to turn on the mic in our first session. So
Good
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. And in the second one, we didn't use a mic because we had to do it online because I wasn't here. So hopefully this audio is better. Hopefully, I guess.
Questionable at best.
Questionable.
Also, it did fall, so I feel like we have just a 10-second gap in between.
Yeah.
Also, when we're talking about being desperate for someone's attention, I don't think it's anyone's fault over there. I don't think even the person whose attention you're trying to grasp for desperately, they don't owe you their friendship.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
don't.
Because it's just that, people can't really help. Like, if they want to be your friend, they want to be your friend. And if they don't, then I'm sorry, they don't.
It's both ways there. One, if you're seeing the signs that someone doesn't want to be as close to you as you want to be to them, there are very obvious signs there. And I think you should back off.
Yeah.
And then the person, if they feel uncomfortable or they're indifferent, they should be like, I appreciate you, but we're just not like that.
Yeah.
I don't see you that way. And it's difficult to have a conversation like that with someone. So
But
I think
necessary.
It's necessary, and I think it's more important for the person who is, because I think the person who is desperate for their attention, I think there's more underlying problems there.
Yeah, like, what's the reason that you need them to respond? What's the reason you need them to reciprocate how you are feeling towards them? Why is that?
Like them specifically too.
Yeah.
Why do you need that
person?
That person. Why do you need
be friends with, you could just go up and talk to anyone and be friends with them.
Another thing I would say is, if you're looking for a relationship where you aren't, I think it's obvious, even when you're in a friendship and they try to tell you that, oh no, you're one of my best friends, you are someone who I love to hang out with.
Yeah.
You'll see a pattern where and this is where, it gets, I think everyone has experienced this in their life sometime. You'll be part of friend groups, or you'll be part of allegedly their friend groups, where they'll hang out all together and they'll never invite you, or they will interact in very different ways, and then when they talk to you, they're going to talk to you very differently from how they talk to each other.
Yeah.
And it'll become evident.
Yeah.
I think
after a while,
it'll become very evident. And I think every person has been in that situation. I don't think that's not
a rare situation.
No, I don't
think that's
so.
just a normal part of life, honestly.
I think so. But I think recognizing,
you have to go through certain alleged friend groups to find the right friend group of people that truly appreciate you. But if you stay stuck in that friend group where you know that they act differently towards you and they don't treat you like a friend properly, you'll never move on to that great friend group you could have found.
Also, if you're just friends with someone to have friends, I would advise against it.
Yeah.
It's better to not hang out with anyone.
It's kind of the same. You're equally as lonely, honestly. You might be able to trick yourself into thinking you're not, oh, they come over to my birthday and I go for their birthday and we talk in school and we share homework. Yeah, but can you really talk to them? If you have something on your mind, can you talk to them about it? Because if not, then, it's better to find a better friend or maybe improve your relationship with yourself.
I think if you look hard enough, you can find someone you will get along with in school. And I know that's difficult, especially for someone if they're more introverted and if someone has social anxiety or something. But my point here is you'll know if that friend group is toxic, and you'll know traits in that friend group which you just don't align with.
Yeah.
Because to impress them, you start becoming more like them.
You start doing things you normally wouldn't do. You start laughing at jokes that you normally wouldn't laugh at, maybe.
I feel like that's a normal, I feel like that's part of everyone's life. It's a norm, I think everyone goes through that transition.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in high school.
Yeah.
You go through 5, 6 different friend groups where you're trying to figure yourself out. You're trying to see
where you fit in, who you fit in with, and I don't know. I feel like in the moment, you don't realize that you're in a toxic relationship. Yeah. But in hindsight, when you analyze something, and you analyze it, then you realize that this was wrong or this wasn't where I was supposed to be.
And I think another thing about toxic relationships that becomes evident over time is that you as a person, I think, start becoming dependent on toxic traits. So I think you start becoming dependent on someone ignoring you. So you start associating someone ignoring you with friendship.
Yeah.
So I think your entire... So when we're talking about a transition between friend groups, they're also saying that no matter how many friend groups you've been and no matter how long you've been in those friend groups, they're going to affect you no matter what.
Yeah.
Some of those things are going to stay with you.
Yep.
It's the same thing when we talk about family, which we will get to in a little bit. But when you grow up with those kind of relationships, you make those associations.
Yeah.
Mentally, you make those associations.
Yeah.
You will, and this is what we talk about this is what we talk about in all psychology. Yeah. It's the basis of being young and being in high school and then making those associations, and then those associations
affecting your adulthood,
affecting how you interact with people,
what kind of relationships you get into. And then there's also gossip, which comes into toxic relationships or really any kind of friendship that you shouldn't really be in. It's like not only gossip behind your back, but also gossip while you're there. Like, suppose you tell a friend something, maybe a slightly sensitive issue, and they just bring it up in front of the entire friend group. And they bring it up insensitively as well, not just bring it up. And maybe, all of the friends make fun of you for a certain thing, like the entire friend group. Or they constantly needle you for one particular, maybe trait, like suppose you suck at time management or something, and they just like to joke about how slow you are in an exam. Or maybe you bring up like
that
a
is
fight.
The funniest thing though.
Yeah.
Like imagine one of your friend groups going, "Gula sucks at giving exams." Wait, Gula, you suck. You don't give exams on time. This question was supposed to be 30 minutes long. You took 40 minutes. Gula, our friendship is over.
It's Gula. A real... You're doing it right now. You're doing it right now.
Is that seriously something that happens?
Yes.
Someone's made fun of you for...
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Do they have nothing better to do with their life?
Apparently not.
I live for that. Though.
Honestly, most people who gossip don't have anything better to do with their lives.
Also, I feel like when we're talking about gossip, it's a little bit different from, I don't know, I think when you're calling your friends out for something that you think is super toxic or negative, I think it should be done private. In a case where a friend is talking to you privately, it should be done privately. Mm-hmm. So if you're having a discussion with your friend and they say something or they've done something that's horrible or bothering you, you should tell them privately. But if they've done it in the context of a group or they've done it in the context of a group chat, then you should confront them over there, because you want them to be aware that it wasn't just you that's feeling uncomfortable in that group setting.
Before you bring it up in a group setting, though, would you talk to other members of the group to see if they were also disturbed by it and then bring it up in the group? Or if you find out that you're the only one who was disturbed by it, would you bring it up separately with them?
I guess it depends on the issue. It depends on how specific the issue is. So, for example, let's say it's like some kind of like weight joke or something, and you're the only one in the group who suffers from body dysmorphia, let's say. So I think in that scenario, you would text them privately. But I think if you're in a group chat or something, and you know people in the group chat well enough, I think you would automatically know if someone would be upset by something. I mean, at least for me, I would know if people in my friend group what they would they would be bothered by because they've talked to me about it. So I know what kind of comments would make them uncomfortable. So
and then you'd bring that up in a
group context so that everyone, and not taking their name obviously that you're making this friend uncomfortable, but just making clear in the context of this group.
Yeah.
Because I think it's different when someone's talking to you privately and when someone's talking to you in a group chat.
Yeah, I guess. But how do you deal with gossip behind your back? Because, like, if they talk about you in front of you, then you can say, okay, I have a problem with this, and I would prefer if you don't joke about this or talk about this certain thing while I'm here. But behind your back, if you find out from somewhere else, how do you bring that up?
It's a very complicated topic because I think some things you're just not meant to know.
Yeah.
Because I think every single human being, I mean, we can sit here and say that no, backbiting is bad, but I think every single
has
human being
backbited at some point, obviously.
It is a fact.
Yeah.
Everyone does it.
Yeah.
Even if you're sitting here and listening, I've never done that, you have done that. Yeah. There is at least one point in your life when you have complained about someone in your life.
Yeah.
It's part of life.
Yeah.
So there's 2 points here. First point is there are some things some people are just not meant to know what you think about them. Some things are just better left unsaid.
Yeah.
I think some things are better left unsaid.
Yeah.
I think if there's something that's bothering you to a point where it is affecting your relationship, I think then you should bring it up with them. It's complicated. It's complicated.
It is complicated.
There are something, because again, I think there are a few things which are better left unsaid. Yeah.
But if it does cause a problem in the relationship, I feel like the first instinct would be to back out of the relationship without saying anything. I don't think that's right though. Like ghosting the person when you find out that they say these things to you and you just don't do you owe that person an explanation for leaving? Then? Because, suppose they say something really horrible behind your back, or just something that most people wouldn't consider horrible, but for you was a really big deal. So instead of talking to them about it, because maybe it's difficult for you to talk about that thing with this friend now that you know that they betrayed your trust by backbiting about it, and you just remove yourself. So do you owe that friend an explanation?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I mean,
because
if they're your friend and if they know you even slightly well, then they would know if something is hurtful enough for you to cut them off.
Yeah.
I assume then that friend would know that if something's that serious.
Yeah.
But again, I also feel there are some things that are better left unknown for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think and I think this is one of the reasons why if someone is especially, I don't know, like if someone can read context really well, I think they suffer in relationships because you overanalyze a situation to a point where you can not only misinterpret, but maybe you can correctly interpret a situation where a person. I think willful ignorance is necessary, and sometimes it's because everyone backbites.
Yeah.
Every single human being on earth backbites.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's complicated. I feel like it depends on the situation, and I feel like it depends on what the person is saying.
Yeah.
And how you feel about those things.
I guess.
Yeah. I guess because I mean I don't want. Okay, let me give you like an example. I'll make it a super serious example just to illustrate what my point is. So let's say in confidence you told someone. Let's say that you're suffering from physical abuse from someone in your family or someone close to you, and you say that to someone in confidence looking for their support. But then you find out that they've spread that information to everyone around you when you specifically told them that that's not the information that you want them to share.
Yeah.
And then even when you're looking at that kind of situation, you need to assess what their motives were. Because I think if just saying it to your friends, I think that's the part where you step in and you're like, okay, so this is just not forgivable. Because I know in that situation, I'd be like, I'm not even giving an explanation. Like, I'm not hanging out with you anymore.
Yeah.
But I think it depends on the person, especially if they're going to a therapist to talk about it or someone like a professional to talk about it. Either to be able to help you or to be able to give you advice that is actually helpful, or to tell the therapist so that the therapist can reach out to you in confidence. See, it's complicated because even in those situations, I think 99% of people would be mad. Like, even if you are telling a therapist, which I think the intention there would obviously be to help your friend out.
Yeah.
But even in those scenarios, I think you would be
angry, a little bit at least, because it was information in the first place that you didn't want shared.
And that's just what the example I'm giving you is a very niche, very serious example of what it's meant to be.
Yeah.
So what we mean by that is that it's very dependent on what the situation is, what it calls for, and
who they're talking to, what their intentions were. You need to assess all that information, and then if it's not that serious, if it's just, oh, I think she's mean, oh, I think she can be insensitive sometimes, oh, I think he's really jealous of some people sometimes. Mm-hmm.
I think those kind of conversations are
needed.
Not needed. I think they're better left unsaid. I don't think you need to have a full-on conversation with your friend about it. I'm not saying lie to your friend, but if it comes up in conversation where they're like, "Oh, I was talking to this person and I act like this," I think naturally you shouldn't lie. You should be like, "Well, I think you could have done it a little bit differently." Okay. But I think if it's not serious to a point where they are either harming themselves or harming someone else, or they aren't harming someone, it's just like a personality trait. Mm-hmm. Because everyone has negative personality traits. Yeah. I think then it's okay to leave things unsaid. It's specific, and if that situation comes up where they ask you your opinion about it, then you talk to them about it.
And you tell them the truth.
You tell them the truth. Yeah. If they ask your opinion.
Yeah.
And then, see, this is complicated. I mean, at least I think everyone has a complicated history about what is appropriate to say to your friend and what isn't in a moment, because some things are better left unsaid, but you also want to make clear what you've said about them and how you've talked about them and what you feel. You want to there's a dichotomy between all those things. So I don't know, I feel like it depends on the situation, it depends on your friend,
but also as long as you're not making excuses for your friend. Because that is also part of, like, once you're in a toxic friendship or any kind of relationship, if it goes on for long enough, you start making excuses. Like, your first instinct is to start making excuses for that person for why they're acting the way they act, rather than accepting, okay, this is wrong. So in that sense, I get that some things are left unsaid, but only if it's because, like, it's not bothering you that much. But it shouldn't be that you're making an excuse for behavior that you know affected you really bad or affected somebody else really horribly. It shouldn't be like, oh, they're going through this thing, that is why they did. Yeah, okay, they're going through something. There's nothing wrong with being empathetic, but there is something wrong with making up excuses for them for every single time, if this is a consistent kind of behavior.
Again, it depends on how serious the situation is. If you're upset with someone because... It depends on the situation again. It depends how serious something is.
Yeah.
If it's, I don't know, if it's getting to the point where it's actually, actually harming people, I think that is where you definitely step in.
Yeah.
It's either affecting other people or it's affecting themselves negatively.
Yeah.
Then I think it's your responsibility to step in there. Mm-hmm. Again, I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Even if you're making excuses for your friend, no one is perfect. No one on earth is perfect. No matter how close you are to someone, there will always be something you don't like about everyone, anyone in your life.
That's natural.
That's natural. And then also backbiting is also
wrong.
Again,
I know everyone does it, but it is wrong in the sense, not if, like, you're bringing it up with, like, a therapist or a professional or someone because you want to help, but, like, maybe just for the sake of spreading gossip, then it's wrong. Or just for the sake of, like, if there was the option for you to not say it, then you shouldn't have said it. If you couldn't help but say it, maybe you're not talking to a therapist, okay? Maybe you're talking to another friend about that because you feel so worried about your friend who shared this with you. Is that wrong? Because you're sharing it with the other friend because you trust them, but the friend who told you about this initially did not trust that friend. Is it wrong in that case? Your intention is still to try to get a second opinion. Your intention is not to gossip.
Oh, no.
Again, it's complicated.
It's complicated.
So it's like, for every situation, you need to analyze this stuff. Like, while keeping this stuff in mind, you need to analyze, okay, what are their intentions here? Were they trying to help? It's okay to be angry at first, obviously, because this was information you didn't want shared. But it's important to see the intentions behind it, because it is complicated.
No, backbiting is wrong. I think
Yeah.
I think negative things are left better unsaid. Entirely to anyone. But I also recognize that it is part of human nature to complain.
Yeah.
And you do want to complain to someone.
Yeah.
So I recognize both of those things. And I feel like as you grow up, it's something you grow out of slightly as well. I think it's more a middle school or even late high school type of thing where you are so entrapped by your feelings about your friends that you have to gossip constantly. I think it's in the context of a school, I think it's more evident there as well.
Yeah. But don't adults do it too? If you bring in family.
I mean, getting to family.
Yeah. Getting to family.
Brilliant.
I know. It was flawless.
With family is very difficult to talk about in this kind of way, especially in our society. See, I subscribe by the theory of chosen family. That's something that I identify with. I'm very lucky in the way that my biological family lines up with my chosen family.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the case with everyone.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the quote that everyone's familiar with, blood is thicker than water, that isn't actually what the true saying was. The true saying was the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. So what that means is the relationships you form in your life and the relationships that someone is portraying with you and how people treat you is more important than what a familial relationship is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right?
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So...
And I mean, yeah, because by definition, family is supposed to be who cares about you, who treats you right. It's not supposed to be like just all of your cousins are your family. So if they're being bad towards you, then it's just like, yeah, but they're my family. So
I mean, it could be even more serious than that. It could be serious enough to a point where you need to set boundaries with your own parents.
Yeah.
It could be serious enough where you need to set boundaries.
I feel like
with
emotional manipulation's pretty out there with.
See, but there's
parents.
I think with parents it's slightly complicated because
it's not always intentional.
It's not always intentional. Parenting comes in there, and then
like they think that they're doing what's best for you, but that's actually kind of damaging you in a way.
I don't think you should set boundaries with your parents when something like that is going on. I think cutting yourself off from your parents is something that should be considered. But it's not always possible. It's not always possible, one, and also there are some scenarios where you just need to let your biological family go. I mean, there are always cases where parents just leave their kids.
Yeah.
Like, parents have children and then they just abandon them on someone's doorstep.
Yeah.
And there's cases where someone has parents and they just step out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went to this, it's similar, but I went to this old age home center.
Yeah.
And over there were these older women and they talked about their experiences, which affected me a lot. And that was, I think, a really important conversation to have with those women, where they said their own families, their husbands and their sons, they had Alzheimer's or they had dementia, so they can't remember things properly.
Okay.
They would put them in a car, they would drive for 4 or 5 hours, they would leave them in a park, and then they would just drive away. And then they wouldn't remember who their son is, where they live, how they live.
Oh.
And then there's a lot of cases where you have these older women and you have the son or the daughter, and you have the in-laws coming in, and you have the daughter-in-law or the son-in-law coming in. And these women said, and a lot of these women said, my daughter-in-law didn't like me, and she used to complain about me to my son. So the son kicked her out of the house.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
God.
So see, so when we're talking about family,
is that really family?
In my mind, I don't think that's really family.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean,
family isn't defined by biology.
Biology, and it's hard for us to imagine how cruel people can be.
Yeah.
Especially if you're.
And anyone can be cruel, even your parents. Just because they're your parents doesn't mean.
Exactly, and what I'm saying is there is a there's a dichotomy here where you have just like plain out not knowing what you're doing and maybe like some faulty parenting that someone isn't aware of and kicking someone out of your house.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a dichotomy there.
Yeah.
And also, we're extremely privileged.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I assume most of the people listening to this are, because at least for me and Gule, we grew up in nice homes. We grew up in a rich family.
Yep.
We'd never had any kind of issue where, at least me, I never had any kind of issue where I was afraid that I couldn't afford food or something.
Yeah.
I was never placed in that situation.
Yeah.
And I was also born, me and Gule were born cisgender, and me and Gule weren't born with any kind of disability, any kind of thing. So we have a lot of transgender women and men in Pakistan who are kicked out of their home as soon as they are born.
Exactly.
We have intersex people, of course, which I was referring to. We switch around the terms intersex and transgender in Pakistan. When we talk about intersex, that means someone who's born with both genitalia.
Okay.
So those people are kicked out of their homes immediately upon birth, because upon inspection, the doctor tells them that your child is intersex.
Okay.
Those children are either kicked out of their home immediately,
Yeah.
or they are raised in a way where they are forced into one specific gender identity.
Yeah.
So it could be someone. It could be someone with a vagina, but they also have hidden testicles inside their body, but they identify more with males. But their family raises them up like they're female.
As a girl,
Their family might raise them up like they're female, but they don't identify with that.
Yeah.
And when they start acting more in line with what they feel inside, which we call gender identity.
Yeah.
When they start expressing that, their family gets very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
This is more evident for us, at least in terms of women.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with misogyny and the patriarchal system of people being against women more.
Yeah.
So if we're raising someone up as a man, and they start acting like, if we're raising someone up as man, quotations, and then they start having feminine characteristics, they are usually kicked out of their homes. That's why we see a lot of homeless transgender women in the street.
Yeah.
And then what's different from intersex is that we have transgender. What transgender means is it's in the word. It's transitioning. So it's someone who was either assigned male at birth or someone who was assigned female at birth. And then growing up later,
they identify with the opposite sex.
With the opposite sex, or they identify with the non-binary gender identity.
Yeah.
So that is what we talk about when we talk about gender identity, and then their gender expression not matching their gender identity.
Yeah.
This is just one small example of the privilege we have in our families of being accepted, and the privilege they don't have, and they weren't accepted.
Yeah.
I was watching this documentary where this transgender woman, I don't think she was intersex, she was transgender. Her exact words were, "I would be a dog in front of my mother laying down if she would say I love you once." So I mean, so this is what I talk about when we're talking about that. When we're talking about cutting people off, family is included in that scenario.
Yeah.
Me and Gule are just very lucky that our chosen family and our biological family line up.
Yeah.
But those things don't always line up
For everyone.
for everyone.
Of course.
Also, I mean, maybe...
And you shouldn't feel guilty about cutting them off.
You shouldn't...
There is a guilt that comes with cutting off a friend, but there will usually be more guilt cutting off a family, because it's like, but they're my family, they're my parents, how can I cut them off? But sometimes it's just what you need to do, because in the end, your life is your life. If they're affecting you so negatively that you can't live your life the way as yourself, as who you are, and they're treating you like something lower than yourself, then you need to cut them off.
Also, you'll find, then that's what chosen family means.
Yeah.
You will find who your people are.
Yeah.
When we went
Who support you.
Who support you. When I went to that old age home,
Yeah.
they said that we still love our family, of course, but there were some people in there who said, these women are my family now.
Yeah.
It was an old age home, and it was also a women's shelter, so
Okay,
people who suffered from abuse in their home.
Yeah.
So they said, this is my family now.
Yeah.
They said, the CEO of that old age home and the people who run that home, they said, this is my family.
Yeah.
I identify them more than I do with my biological family.
Yeah. 'Cause it's about your support system. It's about who identifies with your experience or understands your experience or just accepts you as you are.
And then it's very common for transgendered people to live in a sort of community with each other because
Yeah.
they're the only ones who understand each other and
Yeah.
support each other.
Yeah.
So we have extremely tight-knit groups of transgender women
Yeah.
and men who relate to each other and
Yeah.
they act as family to each other. They
Yeah.
don't their family abandoned them.
Yeah.
They're family to each other.
Yeah.
When we're talking about cutting off family, it's a lot more serious than talking about cutting off friends because I
Yeah.
think with friends you have the option to cut them off whenever you want,
Yeah.
but you're dependent on your family.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, especially if you're a child, you're dependent on your family. You're not only financially dependent on your family, you're dependent on them for everything.
Yeah.
For support,
Shelter.
for shelter, for
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And I think if you're in a kind of position as those women or those older women where you're kicked out of your house, I think
Yeah.
that is the point where even if your family apologizes to you, you listen to them. But I don't think you owe them.
You don't owe them forgiveness.
No, you don't. You don't owe them forgiveness, and you don't owe them ever accepting them as your family again. Even if
Yeah.
those people do ask for your forgiveness later
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
I don't think that's forgivable.
Yeah.
I don't think
so.
I don't think no matter what you would do, at least for me,
Yeah.
I'm not, this is I'm talking about more my experience here. I don't know what those women would do. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's their family.
Yeah.
At least for me,
Right. Yeah.
that would be something that would be. I wouldn't have the strength to forgive someone for that.
Yeah.
I
How do
wouldn't.
you make up for kicking someone out of your house?
I wouldn't hurt them obviously, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't say no.
But just
I would just
stay
be like,
away.
yeah, I'd just be like, I don't want to interact with you. Just stay
Yeah.
away from me.
Yeah.
Like you're not part of my life anymore.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be able to forgive someone.
Yeah. Because in most cases, it would be like taking a step back.
Mm.
When you move out and then, or get kicked out, then you have to obviously fend for yourself, but then you find your own people and you find out how to survive on your own and you learn how to grow out of that environment.
Mm.
And if you accept that apology, that might mean getting back into that environment. And if you think you can't handle it or you think it'll backtrack all the progress you made, then you don't owe it to them. You don't owe them anything.
Also, we're talking about an extremely serious example here.
Yeah,
We're talking about
yeah.
people being kicked out.
Yeah.
We also need to realize that parents are human beings
Yeah.
and that
They make mistakes.
they make mistakes. And I think in our society, in our culture, it's extremely hard to recognize that parents do make mistakes.
Yeah.
But parents do make mistakes. And it's
Yeah.
okay that they make mistakes. They're human
Yeah,
beings.
exactly.
They're going to make a mistake at some point.
Yep. Even
It's-
if their intentions are in the right place.
It's okay.
Yeah.
People make mistakes.
Yeah.
I think weighing the I think cutting family off comes to a point where you are with them and it not only constantly feels draining, but the resources they are giving you are not limited. They're priced. So
Yeah.
they're
Conditioned.
They're conditional.
Yeah.
They're giving you shelter conditionally.
Yeah.
They're giving you love conditionally.
Conditionally.
They're only going to
Family is kind of supposed to be about unconditional love.
yeah. They're only going to feed you food if you get an A.
Yeah.
They're not gonna beat you with a metal rod if you get a C.
Yeah.
I think that's unfortunately a very common experience in
Yeah.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
And I think in the moment we see it as, oh, that's just how Pakistani families are and that's just how Pakistani parents are. It's okay. But I think in the moment realizing as you grow up where you aren't seeing them alleviate that anger for you, you
Yeah.
aren't seeing them alleviate that feeling of trying to control you,
Yeah.
or I think all parents try to better you in some kind of way, but
Yeah.
where it's getting to the point where they're either so physically abusive or so abusive in a way where your health, your physical health,
Yeah.
and your mental health,
Yeah.
they are being affected so negatively that you're either contemplating hurting yourself or you're
Yeah.
contemplating suicide even.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the point where if you're in the position,
You need to remove yourself.
remove yourself and then set up boundaries with your parents
Yeah.
and try to contact some help
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
what you're going through.
I feel like setting boundaries is the first step with family, at least. If it's not too extreme of a situation, we're obviously discussing pretty extreme situations, but I think the first thing when you feel like your relationship with your family is being jeopardized in some way, it's to set boundaries and see if they respect those boundaries. And then you decide how to go about it from there. It's a common thing at least in the brown families that I know, where all the relatives get together and there will be some sort of comment about your weight or what you're eating, or there will be, oh, my daughter got an A, what did your daughter get? A C, what's she gonna do? My daughter's gonna become a doctor, what's your daughter studying? Sociology? What's she gonna do with that?
I would bully a person studying sociology
I know
as well.
you would. You do bully people studying sociology.
I studied sociology.
Yeah. Yes. I'm well aware.
You're doing a degree in sociology? Come on.
I mean, we're doing a degree in psychology. It's not that better.
I bully myself too. It's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think
but in my mind, I can't even categorize that in the same word.
Yeah.
As the things we mentioned before.
Yeah.
Those are not even comparable situations.
Of course not.
I think.
But I mean, setting boundaries is important just generally.
Generally,
because even if you aren't in a toxic relationship, boundaries should be set for the purpose of self-care. And eventually, if you continue to not set boundaries, it might increase the chances of you transitioning into a toxic relationship.
I mean, if you're dependent on your family and those kind of situations are prevalent where you have group gatherings and they are making fun of you.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it this way.
I don't want to
say it this way, but honestly, you'll have to put up with it. There's no other way around it.
Yeah.
If you are dependent on your family and your family speaks to you and you're in group gatherings where you are being spoken to in that way, you can talk to your family about it, and then I think in most scenarios they would try to support you and be like, it's okay, nothing's wrong, they're just talking, we didn't mean it like that.
Yeah.
So I think honestly when we're talking about families, you have to put up with some of it. You have to put up with some of it. You have to.
You have no choice.
You won't survive otherwise.
Yeah.
But the important thing here is that you recognize that that's your family, and if you speak against them, it will cause issues that not only affect you, it will cause issues that affect your entire family.
Yeah.
But saying that, I also want then people to recognize that if they are in a situation where they're being made fun of over there, and they do accept it there, they aren't accepting it in a position where they are in full control.
Yeah.
You aren't in full control of those situations, and you aren't only responsible for yourself. You're responsible for what your parents go through. Maybe you're responsible for how they see your parents. So maybe if you speak up against them, you're like, why are you talking about me like that? They'll say, your mother doesn't know how to raise you. They'll start insulting her. Yeah. So you're not only responsible for yourself in that situation, you're responsible for other people in that situation. Mm-hmm. So regrettably, I have to say, suck it up, I guess.
Sometimes you just have to suck it up. Yeah.
But then also recognizing that when you are in full control of a situation, you need to say that I'm not comfortable with this.
Yeah.
I don't want you to say this.
Yeah. But even when you're not in full control of the situation, I feel like it's important to recognize that thing is wrong. Like, it's wrong. There's nothing wrong with recognizing that what they're saying is wrong and hurtful to you. You should recognize that, and then in those cases, it's really important to see how you're talking to yourself when you're internalizing all of that. Because obviously not in every situation you can say, like, why are you talking to me about that, like you said. But you should, I guess in those cases you should kind of remind yourself, or you should have some sort of support system where you can say, this is the thing that's bothering me, instead of bottling it up. Because that's also worse. You shouldn't internalize what they're saying because it's wrong. Just because you can't speak up about it doesn't mean it's not wrong. So I think that's really important.
I think me and Gule are going to stop here.
Yeah.
In this episode.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, we were trying to shorten it even more. But
We tried.
It's not going to work out.
The effort was there, okay? We swear the effort was there.
Also, next week, give us suggestions about what you want us to talk about.
Yeah.
We'll research it. We'll talk to some experts about it.
Yeah.
We'll talk to some mental health experts.
Yeah.
If there's something that's bothering you and there's something that you think we should talk about,
yeah.
hit us up. You can put down a comment under the YouTube video. I don't know how technology works. You can Twitter. We don't have that. Just put a comment underneath the YouTube video and we might see it.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye, guys. Then see you next week.
Yep. See you next week, guys.